And here we are back with another Dahlberg music TV production. Decided to take on Reading Heavier Than Heaven, even though I'm not really a pro Kurt Cobain's suicide movement. And this book brings back a lot of weird memories. It's actually so old that it's started to yellow the pages. But I figured not trying to totally rip off Media G-Town and copycat his style, I figured I would give my own personal opinion on some of the things written in this book, as Charles Cross can lick my nutsack. And I guess we'll start with the author's notes. Less than a mile from my house sits a building that can send a graveyard chill up my spine as you see the Alfred Hitchcock film. The gray one-story structure is surrounded by a tall chain-link fence, unusual security in a middle-class neighborhood of sandwich shops and apartments. 3 businesses are behind the fencing: a hair salon, State Farm insurance office, and Stan Baker's Shooting Sports. It was this third business where on March 30th, 1994, Kurt Cobain and a friend purchased a Remington shotgun. The owner later told the newspaper he was unsure why anyone was buying such a gun when it wasn't hunting season. Well, first off, if anybody had a brain and understood what was really going on, he bought a shotgun for protection because he was dealing with burglars and was receiving death threats at the time. Every time I drive by Stan Baker's, I feel as if I've witnessed a particularly horrific roadside accident, and in a way I have. The events that follow Kurt's gun shop purchase leave me with both deep unease and desire to make inquiries that I know, by their very nature, are unknowable. They are questions of concerning spirituality and the role of madness and artistic genius, the ravages of drug abuse on a soul, and the desire to understand the chasm between the inner and outer man. These questions are all too real to any family touched by addiction, depression, or suicide. Families are enshrouded by such darkness, which includes mine. This is why I ask these questions that can't be answered is its own kind of haunting. These mysteries fueled this book, but in a way its genius began years before, during my youth in a small Washington town where a monthly packages from Columbia Record and Tape Club offered me rock and roll salvation from circumstance. Here you go, I'll get you one of those classic Dahlberg burps in there. Inspired in one of those mail order albums, I left the rural landscape to become a writer and a magazine editor in Seattle across the state. A few years later, Kurt Cobain found a similar transcendence through the same record club, and he turned that interest into a career as a musician. Our paths would intersect in 1989 when my magazine did the first cover story on Nirvana. It was easy to love Nirvana because no matter how great their fame and glory, they always seemed like underdogs. And the same could be said for Kurt. He began his artistic life in a double-wide trailer copying Norman Rockwell illustrations and went on to develop a storytelling gift that would infuse his music with a special beauty. As a rock star, he always seemed to misfit, but I cherished the way he combined adolescent humor with old man crustiness. Seeing him around Seattle, impossible to miss, with his ridiculous cap and flaps over his ears. He was a character in the industry with a few true characters. There were many times writing this book when the humor seemed only the beacon of light in this Sisyphean task. Heavier Than Heaven encompassed 4 years of research, 400 interviews, and numerous file cabinets of documents, hundreds of musical recordings, many sleepless nights, and miles of driving between Seattle and Aberdeen. The research took me places, both emotional and physical, that I thought I'd never go. There were moments of great elation, as when I first heard the unreleased You Know You're Right, a song I'd agree ranks with Kurt's best. Yet for every joyful discovery there were times of almost unbearable grief, as when I held Kurt's suicide note in my hand, observing it stored in a heart-shaped box next to the keepsake lock of his blonde hair. My goal in Heavier Than Heaven was to honor Kurt Cobain by telling the story of his life, of the hair in that note, without judgment. That was the approach only possible because the generous assistance of Kurt's close friends and his family and bandmates. Nearly everyone I desired to interview eventually shared their memories, and the only exceptions were a few individuals with plans to write their own histories, and I wished them the best in all their efforts. Kurt's life was a complicated puzzle, all more complex because he kept so many parts hidden, and that compartmentalization was both the end result of the addiction and a breeding ground for it. As times I imagined I was studying a spy, a skilled double agent who has mastered the art of making sure that no person would know the details of his life. A friend of mine, herself recovering from drug addiction and a drug addict, once described what she called the no-talk rule of families like hers. We grew up in a household, she said, where we were told don't ask, don't talk, don't tell. It was a code of secrecy, and out of those secrets and lies, powerful shame overtook me. This book, and for all those with courage to tell the truth, to ask the painful questions, and break free of the shadows of the past. Charles R. Cross, Seattle, Washington, April 2001. Alright, and there's the end of the author's notes. And now we're going to break into the prologue for Heavier Than Heaven, which to me looks like, I'm guessing, almost chapter numero uno. If you like this kind of content, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.